All right, let's cut the crap and talk about slow productivity. The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout, a book by Cal Newport, published in 2024 by Portfolio Penguin. Before we get into the guts of it, here's the deal. This is an independent summary. It is not and will never be a substitute for reading the actual book. If you're serious about fixing your fried brain and your joke of a workflow, you need to engage with the source. This is just me breaking down the core arguments so you can see if they're worth your time. Don't be the person who reads a summary and pretends they've read the book. Nobody likes that person. 1.1. The Modern Epidemic of Useless Busyness. So what's Newport's big beef? He kicks things off by painting a picture that's probably going to feel way too familiar. He talks about the modern knowledge worker, that person hunched over a laptop, jacked up on caffeine, juggling a million tasks, and feeling like they're constantly drowning. You know the type. Maybe it is you. You're always on. Your Slack notifications are a relentless machine gun of demands, and your calendar looks like a game of Tetris played by a sadist. The result? You're exhausted, burnt out. You feel like you're working harder than ever. But when you look back at your week, you can't point to a single goddamn thing of actual value that you produced. Newport calls this phenomenon pseudo-productivity. It's the illusion of accomplishment. It's looking busy, acting busy, and performing busyness for an audience of your colleagues and managers. It's a relentless churn of low-value, high-visibility tasks, answering emails at lightning speed, attending pointless meetings, constantly signaling your availability. Think about it. Your boss can't easily measure the quality of the deep, complex project you're supposed to be working on, but they can see you're online at 9 p.m. They can see you respond to an email in 30 seconds. So the entire system defaults to rewarding the thing it can see, your frantic, desperate activity. It's a trap, and we all walked right into it. The problem with knowledge work, as Newport points out, is that unlike building a chair or farming a field, the process is invisible and the output is often ambiguous. There's no clear, objective measure of productivity. So we invented one, and the one we chose is moronic. We decided that more is better. More hours logged, more emails sent, more tasks checked off a to-do list. We've basically taken the logic of an assembly line and tried to apply it to creative, cognitive work. It's like trying to write a great novel by typing faster. The logic is fundamentally broken, and it's breaking us in the process. 1.2. The Folly of the Overloaded Mind. Newport dives into the cognitive science of it all, but you don't need a PhD to get the point. Your brain isn't a computer. It can't just run a dozen intensive programs at once without the whole system crashing. He argues that the state of constant overload, what he calls cognitive overload, doesn't just make you tired, it makes you stupid. When your attention is fragmented across 20 different tabs, 3 chat conversations, and a looming deadline, you're not actually multitasking. You're just switching from one thing to another very quickly, and you're doing a shitty job at all of them. He shares an anecdote about a writer who hit a wall so hard he couldn't even form sentences anymore. His brain was just fried from the pressure to produce content at an inhuman pace. He was a content machine, and the machine broke. This isn't some abstract sob story. It's a warning. This is the logical endpoint of the path you're on. You think you're a hero for juggling it all, but you're just a clown juggling flaming torches, and sooner or later, you're going to get burned. The existential gut punch here is that you're choosing this. You're choosing to let your attention be shredded into confetti because it feels easier than the alternative. The alternative is facing a big, hard, important task and doing the slow, difficult, and often frustrating work of making progress. It's easier to clear your inbox. It feels good. It gives you a little hit of dopamine, like a lab rat pressing a button for a sugar pellet. But those pellets aren't nutrition. You're starving your mind of the deep, focused effort it needs to create anything worthwhile. And you're trading your potential for a series of cheap, empty wins. Seriously, is that the trade you want to make with the limited time you have on this planet? 1.3. A saner path. Learning from the old masters. So, are we all just doomed to be burnt-out husks of our former selves? Newport argues, no. But the solution isn't another productivity app or a new time management hack. Those are just better, faster ways to run on the same hamster wheel. The solution is to change the entire goddamn paradigm. He proposes a philosophy he calls slow productivity. To make his point, he looks back at figures from a time before Slack notifications and corporate buzzwords. Think of people like Jane Austen, who wrote some of the most enduring novels in the English language while living a quiet, domestic life, often writing in secret. Or Galileo, who revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos. These people weren't productive in the modern sense. They didn't have color-coded schedules or to-do lists that scrolled for miles. What they had was focus, patience, and an obsession with quality. They weren't trying to do a million things at once. They were trying to do a few things and do them exceptionally well. They worked at a pace that was natural and sustainable, with seasons of intense effort followed by periods of rest and reflection. Their work wasn't a frantic sprint. It was a long, deliberate journey. This is the core of the slow productivity idea. It's about rejecting the modern cult of busyness and embracing a more humane, more effective, and ultimately more meaningful way of working. The book lays out 3 core principles to achieve this, which are essentially the pillars of this whole philosophy. We'll get into the nitty-gritty later, but for now they are. 1. Do fewer things. Stop trying to be a hero who does it all. Figure out what actually matters and ruthlessly cut out the rest. 2. Work at a natural pace. Your brain has rhythms. Your energy has limits. Stop fighting them. Work in sprints, then rest. Don't try to maintain an impossible pace forever. 3. Obsess over quality. Shift your focus from the volume of your output to its excellence. The goal isn't to produce more, it's to produce better. This isn't about being lazy. It's the opposite. It's about being so damn serious about your work that you refuse to let it be diluted by the meaningless crap that fills most people's days. It's about having the guts to say no, to go offline, to disappoint people in the short term so you can produce something of real, lasting value in the long term. It's about choosing your struggles. You can choose the struggle of constant low-grade anxiety and frantic busyness, or you can choose the struggle of deep focus and the discomfort of tackling something truly difficult. The first one leads to burnout and regret. The second one, Newport argues, leads to a masterpiece. Choose 2.1 Principle 1, Do Fewer Things, or How to Stop Being a Useless Jack of All Trades. All right, let's get into the first pillar of this whole slow productivity thing. Do fewer things. This sounds simple, almost insultingly so. But let's be honest, you're terrible at it. The idea of doing less sends a jolt of panic through your system. What will my boss think? What if I miss an opportunity? What if people think I'm lazy? This fear is exactly why you're stuck. Newport's point is that the path to producing anything of value isn't paved with a million tiny checked-off boxes on your to-do list. It's a narrow, focused road with steep drop-offs on either side, where the distractions and low-value tasks go to die. The modern workplace has turned us into professional jugglers. We think the goal is to keep as many balls in the air as possible. But Newport argues we've got it all wrong. The goal isn't to juggle. The goal is to build something. You can't build a goddamn house if you're trying to juggle chainsaws at the same time. The first step is to put the chainsaws down. Most of the work you do, the endless email chains, the status update meetings, the circling back and touching base, it's all just juggling. It's a performance of productivity, not the act of it. He brings up the example of the legendary director and producer Peter Jackson. When Jackson was making The Lord of the Rings, he didn't also try to launch a clothing line, start a podcast, and personally answer every piece of fan mail. He went to New Zealand, disappeared from the world, and dedicated himself to one monumental task for years. He did one thing, and that one thing reshaped cinema. You're not Peter Jackson, I get it. But the principle is the same. Your best work, the stuff you'll actually be proud of when you're old and wrinkly, will come from deep, sustained focus on a very small number of projects. By saying yes to every little request, you are implicitly saying no to doing anything great. 2.2 The Tyranny of the Open Loop. So why is this so hard? Newport identifies a key psychological trap, the fear of open loops. An open loop is any commitment or task you've accepted but not yet completed. Answering that email, preparing for that meeting, finishing that report. Each one is a little loop open in the back of your mind, sucking up cognitive bandwidth. The more loops you have open, the more your mental RAM is clogged with background processes. This is what leads to that feeling of constant low-grade anxiety and the inability to concentrate on anything for more than 5 minutes. Our natural instinct is to try and close these loops as quickly as possible. Answering an email the second it arrives feels good because you've closed a loop. Phew, one less thing to worry about. But this is a sucker's game. For every loop you close, 5 more appear in its place. The fire hose of requests is endless. By trying to close every loop immediately, you condemn yourself to a reactive, shallow mode of work. You become a professional loop closer, a glorified switchboard operator for other people's priorities. I remember a time when I thought being responsive was the key to success. I'd answer every email within minutes, priding myself on my efficiency. The result? People learned that I was the guy to go to for quick answers. My inbox became a black hole of other people's problems. I was so busy closing their loops that I had zero time or energy left to start my own. I wasn't creating anything. I was just processing. My own projects, the stuff that actually mattered to me, gathered dust. I had to make a choice. Be a highly efficient processor of other people's crap, or be a slightly less responsive creator of my own work. Guess which one I chose? You can't have both. The existential turn of the screw here is that your refusal to limit your work is a form of ego. You think you can handle it all. You think you're the exception. You're not. Your cognitive capacity is finite. Your time is finite. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're not just adding a task. You're actively stealing resources from what's truly important. It's an act of self-sabotage disguised as conscientiousness. 2-3. How to actually do fewer things. The art of the no. Newport isn't just a philosopher of work. He provides concrete strategies. This isn't about just shouting no at everyone who asks you for something, though that's a good start. It's about systematically reducing your workload at an institutional and personal level. One of his key ideas is to establish a hard limit on the number of projects you work on at any given time. He calls this a work in progress, WIP limit. In manufacturing, this is a standard concept. You don't start building a new car until the previous one is further down the assembly line. It prevents bottlenecks. Why don't we apply this to knowledge work? Decide on a number, say 2 or 3 major projects at a time. That's it. When someone comes to you with a new, amazing opportunity, the answer isn't yes. The answer is, that sounds interesting, but I have no room on my plate right now. I can either put it on a waiting list for next quarter, or we can decide which of my current projects to kill to make room for it. This forces a real conversation about priorities. It makes the trade-offs explicit. Most urgent, new projects suddenly seem a lot less urgent when they have to displace something already in progress. It's a beautifully simple way to filter out the noise. Another tactic is to treat your work commitments like a budget. You only have so much capacity. Before taking on anything new, you have to account for its cost. A quick 30-minute meeting isn't 30 minutes. It's the 15 minutes of prep before, the 30 minutes of the meeting itself, the hour of follow-up tasks it generates, and the cognitive cost of context switching. That quick meeting just cost you 2 hours of your life. Was it worth it? When you start thinking in terms of real costs, you become a lot more stingy with your yes. Here's your call to action, and it's not going to be easy. 1. Figure out what actually matters. Look at your job description, your long-term goals, or whatever you use to define your purpose. Identify the 1 to 3 work streams that produce the vast majority of value. Everything else is secondary. 2. Set a hard WIP limit. Maybe it's 2 projects, maybe it's 3. Don't go above it. For anything else, create a wait list. This isn't a no, it's a not now, which is often just as effective and more politically palatable. 3. Audit your obligations. For 1 week, track every single thing you do. Every meeting, every quick question, every email chain. At the end of the week, look at the list and ask a simple, brutal question for each item. Did this directly contribute to one of my core projects? You'll be horrified by the answer. That horror is your motivation to start cutting things out. Stop acting like an all-you-can-eat buffet for other people's requests. You're a high-end restaurant with a very short, very exclusive menu. Getting a table should be hard. That's what makes the meal worthwhile. Choose your dishes. 3.1 Principle 2. Work at a natural pace. Stop pretending you're a fucking machine. Now for the second big idea from Newport. Work at a natural pace. This directly attacks the modern obsession with relentless 24/7 hustle. We've been fed this bullshit narrative that success means working yourself to the bone, sleeping 4 hours a night, and being perpetually on. It's a stupid, macho fantasy that has nothing to do with how high-quality work actually gets done. The human mind is not a factory machine. It can't operate at maximum capacity indefinitely. It has natural rhythms, seasons of high energy, and seasons of rest. To ignore this is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of ignorance. Newport argues that our work lives should be more like an athlete's training schedule than an assembly line's shift. An elite runner doesn't sprint every single day. That's how you get injured. They alternate periods of intense training with periods of active recovery and complete rest. The rest is not an absence of training. It is a part of the training. It's when the muscles rebuild and get stronger. The same is true for your brain. The aha moments, the creative breakthroughs, the solutions to complex problems, they rarely happen when you're staring at a screen, grinding away. They happen in the shower, on a walk, or when you're staring out a window doing absolutely nothing. Your brain needs downtime to consolidate information and make new connections. Think about the absurdity of the corporate 9 to 5, which is really more like an 8 to 7. It assumes you can be equally productive at 9 a.m. on a Monday as you are at 4 p.m. on a Friday. It's a system designed for robots, not humans. It completely ignores the ebbs and flows of energy, motivation, and inspiration. Trying to force yourself to be creative or insightful on demand is like trying to force a plant to grow by yelling at it. It doesn't work, and you just end up looking like an idiot. 3.2. Embracing seasonality in your work. A key concept here is seasonality. Just like a farmer has seasons for planting, growing, and harvesting, a knowledge worker should have seasons for different types of work. There might be a sprint season where you go all in on a project, working long, focused hours to hit a critical deadline. But this must be followed by a slow season, a period of lower intensity where you decompress, recharge, and work on less demanding tasks. The problem is, modern work culture wants it to be sprint season all year round. It's an endless marathon run at a sprinter's pace, and the only finish line is burnout. I once tried to write a book while also holding down a demanding job. My brilliant idea was to just work every night and every weekend until it was done. For the first month, I felt like a productivity god. Then the cracks started to show. My thinking got fuzzy. I was irritable. The writing, which had started with a spark of excitement, became a joyless slog. I was just putting words on the page, but they were dead words. I had completely exhausted my creative well. It took me stepping away for a full 2 weeks, doing nothing related to the book, for the ideas to start flowing again. I learned the hard way that you can't force creativity. You have to court it, and part of that courtship is knowing when to leave it the hell alone. The existential truth here is that your obsession with constant output is a way of avoiding the terrifying uncertainty of creative work. If you're always busy, you don't have to confront the possibility that your ideas aren't good enough or that you don't have the answer. The frantic pace is a shield, but it's also a cage. It protects you from failure, but it also prevents you from ever achieving true success. Embracing a natural pace means accepting these periods of quiet and uncertainty. It means trusting that rest is not laziness, but a necessary ingredient for insight. 3.3. Practical ways to work at a natural pace. So how do you escape the cult of the endless sprint? Newport offers a few concrete strategies to reclaim a more natural rhythm. First, stop working at the same intensity every day. This is a radical idea for most people. It means giving yourself permission to have a slow day. Maybe on a Tuesday, you're on fire and you work for 6 straight hours in a state of deep focus. Great. But maybe on Thursday, your brain feels like a bowl of oatmeal. Instead of fighting it and trying to force yourself to be productive, you lean into it. You do administrative tasks, you clean your office, you go for a long walk. You essentially declare a recovery day for your brain. This isn't about slacking off, it's about strategic energy management. By allowing yourself to have slow days, you preserve your energy for the days when you can actually make significant progress. Second, Build slack into your schedule. Don't book your days back to back with meetings and tasks. That's a recipe for disaster. The moment one thing goes wrong, a meeting runs over, an unexpected problem arises, your entire day implodes. Newport suggests leaving significant chunks of your day unscheduled. This isn't free time, it's buffer time. It's there to absorb the unexpected and to provide space for deep thinking. A schedule that is packed to the gills is a brittle schedule. A schedule with slack is a resilient one. Third, and this is a big one, respect the shutdown. When your workday is over, be over. Don't check your email from the dinner table. Don't quickly look at a Slack message before bed. Create a shutdown complete ritual, as Newport has famously advocated for in the past. It could be as simple as saying the phrase shutdown complete out loud. This signals to your brain that it's time to stop thinking about work. Without this clear boundary, your brain will keep churning on work-related problems in the background, preventing you from ever truly resting and recharging. Here's the call to action. 1. Plan your seasons. Look at the quarter ahead. Can you identify a period for a high-intensity sprint and then deliberately schedule a low-intensity period afterward? Make it explicit. 2. Schedule nothing. Block out at least one 90-minute deep work block on your calendar every day, but also block out a 60-minute slack block where you have no agenda. Defend this time ferociously. 3. Define your workday's end. Pick a time. Say 6 p.m. At 6 p.m., you are done. No exceptions. Create a ritual to mark the end of the day. Tidy your desk. Make a to-do list for tomorrow. Close your laptop. Then walk away and don't look back until the morning. Stop worshiping at the altar of exhaustion. It's not a badge of honor. It's a symptom of a broken system. Your best work doesn't come from your ability to endure pain. It comes from your ability to manage your energy with intelligence and foresight. Treat yourself like a professional athlete, not a disposable cog in a machine. Your future self will thank you for it. 4.1 Principle 3. Obsess over quality, because no one remembers the guy who wrote 1,000 mediocre memos. We've arrived at the final and perhaps most crucial pillar of slow productivity: obsess over quality. If do fewer things is about clearing the decks and work at a natural pace is about finding a sustainable rhythm, this principle is about what you actually do with that newfound time and energy. Newport's argument is devastatingly simple. Shift your focus from volume to value. Stop asking, how much can I get done? And start asking, how good can I make this? In the world of pseudo-productivity, quantity is king. The person who sends the most emails, attends the most meetings, and churns out the most reports is seen as the productive one. But this is a complete delusion. Most of that output is just noise. It's corporate chaff created to signal activity rather than to create actual value. Newport wants you to become a craftsman in a world of factory workers. While everyone else is focused on the speed of the assembly line, you should be focused on the thing being built. Is it beautiful? Is it useful? Is it built to last? He uses the example of a master woodworker. They don't try to churn out 100 wobbly chairs a day. They spend weeks, maybe months, on a single piece. They obsess over the choice of wood, the precision of the joints, the smoothness of the finish. The final product is not just a chair. It's an artifact of their skill and dedication. It has an integrity that the mass-produced junk simply cannot replicate. This is the mindset Newport wants you to bring to your work, whether you're writing code, designing a marketing campaign, or formulating a legal argument. Stop being a content farm. Start being an artisan. 4.2, the dangerous seduction of good enough. The biggest enemy of quality is the siren song of good enough. You've got a deadline, you're tired, and what you've produced is fine. It meets the minimum requirements. It won't get you fired. So you ship it. You move on to the next thing. This is the default mode for most knowledge workers. We are addicted to the feeling of completion, of checking the box. We'll sacrifice excellence for the cheap thrill of being done. Newport argues that this is a catastrophic long-term strategy. A career built on a foundation of good enough is a career that goes nowhere. You become a reliable cog, but you never become indispensable. You never produce anything that makes people stop and say, "Wow, who did this?" The work that gets you noticed, the work that builds a real reputation, is the work where you pushed past good enough and aimed for something extraordinary. I remember early in my career, I was asked to prepare a presentation for a senior executive. I put together a decent slide deck. It was fine. The night before, a little voice in my head said, "This isn't your best work. You're cutting corners." I was tired and I wanted to go to bed, but that voice bugged me. So I stayed up for another 3 hours. I rethought the entire narrative. I found better data. I simplified the visuals. I practiced the delivery until it was seamless. The next day, the presentation was a hit. That one moment of pushing past good enough did more for my career than the previous 6 months of reliably delivering fine work. It taught me that the space between good and great is where your reputation is forged. The existential twist is that settling for good enough is a form of disrespect to your work, to your audience, and ultimately to yourself. It's an admission that you don't think your work or your time is worth the extra effort. It's a quiet declaration of mediocrity. Obsessing over quality, on the other hand, is an act of self-respect. It's saying that you care enough to create something of genuine value, even if it's harder, even if it takes longer, even if no one is explicitly asking you to. It's a commitment to your own potential. 4.3, building a reputation for quality. So how do you cultivate this obsession in a world that rewards speed and quantity? It's not easy, and it requires a deliberate shift in your professional identity. First, work backward from the desired quality. Before you start a project, define what excellent looks like. Don't just think about the deadline and the deliverables. Think about the impact. What would a truly exceptional version of this project achieve? Who would it impress? What standard are you aiming for? Write it down. Make your definition of awesome an explicit part of the project plan. This gives you a North Star to guide you when the temptation to cut corners arises. Second, build feedback loops into your process. Quality is not achieved in a vacuum. You need other people's eyes on your work. But don't just ask, "What do you think?" That's a lazy question that invites lazy feedback. Ask specific, hard questions. What's the weakest part of this argument? If you could only keep one idea from this proposal, what would it be and why? What's one thing I could do to make this 10% better? Seek out the people who will give you the honest, brutal feedback you need, not the people who will just tell you it's great. The ego hates this. Your long-term success depends on it. Third, embrace iteration. The first version of anything is always shit. This is a universal law. The difference between a master and an amateur is that the master understands this and sees the first draft as the beginning of the work, not the end. Be prepared to revise, rewrite, and even throw everything out and start over. I once wrote 50,000 words of a book project before realizing the core premise was flawed. I deleted the entire file. It was painful, but it was necessary. I had to kill my mediocre darling to make room for a better idea. The obsession with quality means you have to be willing to destroy your own work in pursuit of a better version. Here's your action plan. It's about building a new identity. 1. Define your craft. For your most important project right now, write down a one-paragraph description of what an A++ version would look like. Be specific. What would its impact be? Who would admire it? Pin this above your desk. 2. Schedule reviews, not just deadlines. For that same project, schedule a specific time for a brutal feedback session with a trusted critical colleague. Do this long before the final deadline, so you have time to act on the feedback. 3. Add a polishing phase to every project. Don't just schedule time to do the work. Schedule a separate, protected block of time after the work is done, specifically for refinement. This is the time to go from good to great. Protect it as if it were the most important part of the project, because it is. Stop being a short-order cook, flipping out mediocre burgers as fast as you can. Be a chef. Take your time. Source the best ingredients. Perfect the technique. Create a meal that people will remember long after they've left the table. Your legacy won't be the number of dishes you served. It will be the quality of the few masterpieces you created. 5.1, putting it all together, the slow productivity flywheel. So now we have these 3 principles. Do fewer things, work at a natural pace, and obsess over quality. On their own, they're useful ideas, but Newport's real insight is how they work together, creating a virtuous cycle, or what you might call a slow productivity flywheel. This isn't just a collection of tips. It's a coherent system where each part reinforces the others. Once you get this flywheel spinning, it becomes a powerful engine for producing meaningful work without burning yourself to a crisp. Here's how it works. You start by doing fewer things. You ruthlessly slash your commitments, kill off low-value projects, and say no to the endless stream of incoming requests. The immediate effect of this is obvious. You have more time and mental space. You've cleared the clutter. This newfound space is what allows the second principle to kick in. With fewer things on your plate, you can now work at a natural pace. You're no longer constantly rushing, context switching, and putting out fires. You can afford to have slow days because you don't have 100 urgent deadlines breathing down your neck. You can build slack into your schedule. You can end your workday at a reasonable hour and actually disconnect. This sustainable pace prevents burnout and, crucially, creates the conditions for the third principle. Because you have the time and the mental energy, you can now afford to obsess over quality. You're not just trying to get a task done so you can move on to the next one. You have the bandwidth to ask, how can I make this great? You can do the extra research, the extra revision, the extra polish that turns good work into exceptional work. And this is where the flywheel really starts to pick up speed. When you start producing work of exceptionally high quality, something magic happens. Your reputation changes. You become known not as the person who is always available, but as the person who delivers outstanding results on the things that matter. This gives you more leverage, more autonomy. Your boss is more likely to trust you when you say a new project isn't a priority. Your colleagues are more likely to respect your boundaries. This newfound leverage makes it even easier to do fewer things. And so the cycle begins again, each rotation making you more focused, more effective, and more in control of your own work life. 5.2, the case of the overwhelmed academic head. Newport provides a compelling case study of a university professor drowning in the pseudo-productivity trap. This professor was trying to do it all: teach multiple classes, serve on a half-dozen committees, advise students, apply for grants, and somehow, in his spare time, conduct the groundbreaking research that was supposed to be the core of his job. He was a classic example of the overloaded mind, constantly busy, perpetually stressed, and producing very little research of any real significance. He was a master of academic busyness. His transformation began when he made a conscious decision to apply the do fewer things principle. He went to his department head and negotiated his way off 2 committees. He told his graduate students that his office hours were now the only time he would discuss their projects, freeing him from a constant barrage of quick questions. It was a painful process. He felt guilty. He felt like he was letting people down, but he stuck to it. This created the space for him to work at a natural pace. He started blocking out entire mornings for research with a strict no meetings, no email policy. Some of those mornings, he just stared at a whiteboard. Other days, he made significant breakthroughs. He stopped trying to force progress every single day and trusted the process. Finally, he turned his attention to obsessing over quality. Instead of trying to churn out a bunch of small, incremental papers, he decided to focus all his research energy on one ambitious, high-risk, high-reward project. He spent a full year on it, going deeper into the topic than he ever had before. The result was a landmark paper that got published in a top-tier journal and fundamentally shifted the conversation in his field. The punchline? After that paper was published, his career took off. He was invited to speak at major conferences. He attracted the best graduate students. He had his pick of grant funding. His newfound reputation gave him so much political capital that he could now say no to almost anything he wanted. The flywheel was spinning at full speed. He was working less, was less stressed, and was producing the best work of his life. 5.3, the existential choice: busyness versus impact. The story of the professor lays bare the fundamental choice you face. It's not a choice between working hard and being lazy. It's a choice between 2 different kinds of hard work. The first is the hard work of busyness, juggling, responding, reacting, and constantly trying to keep your head above water. It feels productive, but it's a frantic, exhausting struggle that rarely leads to anything of lasting value. The second is the hard work of focus, saying no, protecting your time, tolerating the discomfort of a slow pace, and pushing through the creative struggle to produce something of exceptional quality. My own career has been a slow, painful journey from the first kind of work to the second. I used to measure my days by how many tasks I completed. I had a to-do list that was a mile long, and the greatest feeling in the world was clearing it. But then I looked back at a year's worth of cleared to-do lists and realized I hadn't built anything. I was just a hamster on a wheel, running really, really fast. The switch to a slow productivity mindset was terrifying. The first time I deliberately ignored my inbox for a whole morning to focus on a single difficult chapter, my brain screamed at me, "You're being irresponsible. People are waiting for you." It felt like I was slacking off. But at the end of that morning, I had a few pages of my best writing. That was real. The 30 emails I could have answered were just noise. The hard truth is that the world doesn't need another person who is good at email. It needs people who can solve hard problems, create beautiful things, and contribute something of unique value. The path of pseudo-productivity will never get you there. It's a comfortable, well-trodden path that leads to a cliff of burnout and irrelevance. The path of slow productivity is harder to start on. It requires courage and discipline, but it's the only path that leads to a career and a life of genuine accomplishment and meaning. Here's the call to action, boiled down to its essence. 1. Identify your flywheel. What is the core, high-value work that you do? How can doing less of other things give you the space to do it at a natural pace? And how will doing it with an obsession for quality earn you the leverage to do even less of the crap in the future? Map it out. 2. Start one cycle. Don't try to change everything overnight. Pick one project. Apply the 3 principles to it as an experiment. Cut out all competing distractions, give it a realistic, unhurried timeline, and commit to an insane level of quality. 3. Trust the process. It will feel wrong at first. It will feel slow. It will feel like you're falling behind. You have to have faith that the flywheel is starting to turn, even if you can't feel the momentum yet. The alternative is to keep running on the hamster wheel, and you know where that leads. Choose your hard, the hard of frantic mediocrity, or the hard of focused excellence. 6.1. The historical roots of our productivity obsession. To really understand how to escape our current mess, Newport argues we first need to understand how we got into it. This isn't some timeless, universal problem. The frantic, anxious, always-on work culture we're drowning in is a surprisingly recent invention. It's the bastard child of some very specific historical and technological trends. By digging into these roots, we can see that our current definition of productivity isn't a law of nature. It's just one idea, and a pretty bad one at that. Newport traces the lineage back to 2 main sources. The first is the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the factory. With the invention of the assembly line, pioneered by people like Frederick Winslow Taylor and his scientific management, we learned to measure work in a new way. Productivity became a simple equation, output per unit of time. How many widgets can a worker produce in an hour? This logic was perfect for manual, repetitive labor. The faster you worked, the more you produced. The problem is, we took this factory logic and stupidly tried to apply it to a completely different kind of work. Knowledge work. The second major source is the more recent digital revolution. The arrival of email, instant messaging, and the smartphone poured gasoline on the fire. These tools were supposed to make us more efficient. Instead, they created what Newport has famously termed the hyperactive hive mind. Communication became instantaneous and essentially free. The result, the volume of communication exploded. The expectation of constant availability became the norm. Every knowledge worker was transformed into a human router, constantly receiving, processing, and forwarding information. This created an entirely new category of work, the shallow administrative churn of managing digital communication. This is the pseudo-productivity that consumes most of our days. 6.2. The rise of the knowledge work assembly line. The combination of factory logic and digital tools created the monster that now rules our lives. The knowledge work assembly line. On this assembly line, you're not screwing a bolt onto a car chassis. You're answering an email, updating a spreadsheet, or attending a status meeting. The widgets you're producing are these little units of visible activity. Your manager, who has no easy way to measure the quality of your deep cognitive work, falls back on the only thing they can measure: the speed of the assembly line. Are you answering emails quickly? Is your calendar full of meetings? Is your Slack status green? This creates a perverse incentive system. The organization rewards visible busyness, so workers perform visible busyness. It doesn't matter if this busyness is actually creating any value. It looks like work, so it's treated as work. Newport shares the story of an office that prided itself on its culture of responsiveness. Employees were expected to answer emails within 15 minutes. The result was a workplace in a constant state of frenzied anxiety. No one could focus on anything for more than 15 minutes. Deep, creative work was impossible. They were incredibly productive at answering emails, but they were completely unproductive at solving their customers' actual problems. This is a failure of imagination on a massive scale. We've taken a 19th century model of productivity and bolted it onto 21st century work. It's like trying to navigate a spaceship with a horse and buggy map. I once worked at a company that measured programmer productivity by lines of code written. It was a disaster. The best programmers, who could solve a complex problem with a few elegant lines of code, looked unproductive. The worst programmers, who wrote thousands of lines of bloated buggy crap, looked like superstars. We were measuring the wrong thing, and by measuring the wrong thing, we were encouraging the wrong behavior. We were rewarding complexity and inefficiency. That's what happens when you apply factory logic where it doesn't belong. 6.3. The pre-industrial artisan. A better model. If the factory worker is the wrong model for knowledge work, what's the right one? Newport suggests we look further back in history to the pre-industrial artisan. Think of a blacksmith, a calligrapher, or a stonemason. Their work had a completely different rhythm and a completely different set of values. First, their work was autonomous. The blacksmith decided when to fire up the forge and what to make. He wasn't at the beck and call of 1,000 incoming messages. He controlled his own process. Second, their pace was variable and natural. There were times of intense, focused work, followed by times of rest or less demanding tasks like sourcing materials. Their work followed the natural seasons of supply and demand, not an arbitrary 9-to-5 schedule. Most importantly, their reputation was based entirely on quality. A blacksmith who made swords that broke in battle didn't stay in business for long. A stonemason whose walls crumbled was out of a job. There was a direct, tangible link between the quality of their output and their livelihood. They didn't get paid for looking busy. They got paid for producing things of value. Their professional identity was synonymous with the quality of their craft. The existential point here is that we've been tricked into adopting the identity of a factory worker when we should be striving for the identity of an artisan. A factory worker is a fungible cog. Their value is in their speed and their compliance. An artisan is a creator. Their value is in their skill, their judgment, and the unique quality of their work. The modern workplace wants you to be a cog because cogs are easy to manage and easy to replace. It takes a conscious act of rebellion to reject that identity and reclaim the mantle of the artisan. Your call to action is a shift in mindset. 1. Identify the factory in your work. What are the tasks you do that are measured by volume and speed rather than value? Answering emails, filing reports. How can you minimize, automate, or batch these tasks to get them out of the way? 2. Define your craft. What is the core, high-skill, value-creating work that you do? What would it mean to approach that work like an artisan? What does quality mean in your context? 3. Perform an artisanal act. This week, pick one task. Instead of just getting it done, decide you're going to make it a showpiece. Give it the time and focus it deserves. Go way past good enough. Treat it like you're signing your name to it for all posterity. Feel the difference in the process and the result. Stop being a good little factory worker. The assembly line is a soul-crushing machine that will chew you up and spit you out. It's time to walk off the factory floor, pick up your tools, and start building something that actually matters. 7.1. Overcoming the obstacles, the social pressure to be productive. So, the slow productivity philosophy sounds great in theory. Do less, work slower, obsess over quality. Who wouldn't want that? But then reality hits. You try to implement these ideas, and you immediately run into a brick wall of social and organizational pressure. This is the part of the book where Newport gets real about the challenges. It's not enough to have a personal philosophy. You have to figure out how to live it in a world that is actively hostile to it. The biggest obstacle is social pressure. Your colleagues are all running around like their hair is on fire. Your boss is constantly checking in. Your Slack channel is a nonstop waterfall of urgent requests. In this environment, if you're the one person who isn't frantically busy, you don't look like a wise, slow-producing artisan. You look like a slacker. The fear of this judgment is powerful, and it's what keeps most people trapped on the hamster wheel. We are social creatures, and the desire to conform is baked deep into our DNA. Newport tells the story of an employee at a tech company who tried to implement a deep work block in the middle of his day. He put it on his public calendar and set his Slack status to focusing. The reaction was not positive. He got messages from colleagues asking if he was okay. His manager pulled him aside to ask if he was feeling disengaged. His attempt to be more productive was interpreted as an attempt to be less of a team player. He was violating the unspoken rule of the office. You must be available and responsive at all times. This performance of busyness is a social bond, and by refusing to participate, you risk being cast out of the tribe. 7.2. The tyranny of the green dot. How technology enforces busyness. This social pressure is amplified 1,000 times over by our technology. Tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and even email have created what Newport calls a culture of presence. The little green dot next to your name on the chat app has become a digital leash. If the dot is green, you are expected to be available. If it's not, people wonder where you are. These tools were designed to facilitate communication, but they have had the unintended side effect of making performance, the performance of being at work, the main event. I fell into this trap myself. I used to keep my email and Slack open on a second monitor all day long. I wasn't even consciously reading it most of the time, but it was there, a constant peripheral flicker. My rationale was that I needed to be available in case something urgent came up. But the real reason was fear. I was afraid that if someone sent me a message and I didn't respond quickly, they would think I wasn't working. That little green dot was my alibi. It was proof that I was at my post, being a good little worker. The cost, of course, was a state of perpetual low-grade distraction. My attention was never fully on my actual work because a part of it was always monitoring the digital leash. It took a conscious, deliberate act of courage to just turn the damn thing off. The existential gut punch here is that you are complicit in your own surveillance. You're not just a victim of this system. You are an active participant. Every time you send an urgent email at 8 p.m., you are reinforcing the expectation that everyone should be working at 8 p.m. Every time you fire off a quick Slack message to get an instant answer instead of thinking the problem through yourself, you are contributing to the culture of distraction. You are part of the problem. This is a classic collective action problem. Everyone would be better off if we all just chilled out a bit, but no one wants to be the first one to step off the gas for fear of getting left behind. 7.3 Strategies for Quiet Rebellion. So how do you fight back? Newport doesn't advocate for a dramatic, table-flipping resignation. He's a pragmatist. He advocates for a form of quiet rebellion. It's about strategically carving out space for slowness and quality within the existing system, without making a big show of it. One key strategy is to make your work visible. The reason your boss gets nervous when they can't reach you is because they can't see your work. Knowledge work is invisible, so make it visible. This doesn't mean sending 1 million status updates. It means creating a simple, shared document or project plan that clearly shows what you're working on, what progress you've made, and what's next. If your boss can see that you are making steady progress on the projects that they actually care about, they will be much less concerned about whether you answer their email in 3 minutes or 3 hours. A clear plan is your best defense against the demands of the hyperactive hive mind. Another strategy is to reframe expectations. Instead of just disappearing to do deep work, you need to manage the expectations of those around you. You can do this by setting up systems. For example, you can create an autoresponder on your email that says, "Thanks for your message. I check email twice a day, at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. If this is urgent, please call my cell. This does two things. First, it immediately lowers the sender's expectation of a quick reply. Second, it creates a high-friction channel, a phone call, for true emergencies, which filters out 99% of the urgent requests that aren't actually urgent at all. You're not saying I'm ignoring you. You're saying, I have a process. People respect processes. Finally, you need to deliver the goods. This is the most important part. The whole point of the slow productivity philosophy is to produce work of exceptional quality. If you're going to be less responsive and less available, you had better make damn sure that the work you do produce is spectacular. Your results are your shield. If you're delivering work that is head and shoulders above what everyone else is doing, people will forgive you for not being a slave to your inbox. Your quality becomes your currency. You can use it to buy your freedom from the cult of busyness. Here's your Rebel's Handbook. 1. Create a dashboard. For your main project, create a one-page document that shows the goal, the key milestones, and your current status. Share it with your boss and key stakeholders. Update it once a week. This is your proof of work. 2. Establish office hours. Designate specific limited times when you are available for meetings and interruptions. Communicate this schedule to your team. Outside of those hours, you are in the workshop. 3. Pick one thing and make it amazing. Choose your next deliverable. Decide that you are going to make it the best damn thing you have ever produced. Go all in on quality. Use the success of that project as the political capital you need to push for more autonomy and more slowness in the future. You can't wait for your company culture to change. It won't. You have to be the agent of change in your own work life. It's a quiet, personal insurgency against the forces of mediocrity and burnout. Start today. 8.1. The Mindset Shift, from scarcity to abundance. At its core, the leap to slow productivity is not just about changing your habits. It's about a fundamental shift in your entire worldview. It's about moving from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. The philosophy of pseudo-productivity, of frantic busyness, is rooted in fear and scarcity. Fear that you're not doing enough. Fear that you'll miss an opportunity. Fear that you'll be seen as irrelevant. It's the belief that your value is determined by the quantity of your activity, and that there's never enough time to do it all. This scarcity mindset keeps you in a reactive crouch. You're constantly scanning the horizon for threats and opportunities, jumping at every little thing that moves. You say yes to everything because you're afraid to miss out. You work long hours because you're afraid of falling behind. It's an exhausting and unsustainable way to live. You're operating from a place of weakness, always trying to prove your worth, always trying to justify your existence by being visibly busy. Slow productivity, on the other hand, is born from a mindset of abundance. It's the confident belief that your value comes not from the volume of your work, but from its unique quality. It's the understanding that there are more than enough good opportunities out there, so you don't have to chase every single one. It's the trust that by focusing on producing exceptional work, the right opportunities will come to you. This mindset allows you to operate from a place of strength and deliberation. You're not reacting, you're creating. You're not scrambling, you're building. 8.2, Redefining Ambition. This shift in mindset requires us to completely redefine what it means to be ambitious. In the culture of busyness, ambition is measured by the speed of your ascent up the corporate ladder. It's about getting the next promotion, the bigger title, the larger team. It's a game of accumulation. More money, more power, more responsibility. And the way you win this game is by outworking everyone else, by being the most responsive, the most available, the most visibly committed. Newport argues for a different kind of ambition, the ambition of the craftsman. The craftsman's ambition is not to climb a ladder, but to master their craft. Their goal is not to accumulate titles, but to produce a body of work that is exceptional and enduring. They are not driven by external validation, but by an internal standard of excellence. This is a quieter, deeper, and ultimately more fulfilling kind of ambition. Think about the difference between a mid-level manager who is crushing it by working 80-hour weeks and attending 15 meetings a day, and a novelist who spends 5 years in quiet solitude to write a truly great book. Who is more ambitious? The culture of busyness would point to the manager. They're making more money. They have more direct reports. They're making things happen. But Newport would argue that the novelist's ambition is of a higher order. It's the ambition to create something of lasting value, something that transcends the quarterly earnings report. It's the ambition to contribute something unique to the world, not just to efficiently manage the status quo. I once knew a guy who was the absolute poster child for corporate ambition. He was smart, driven, and he played the game perfectly. He was always the first one in, the last one to leave. His calendar was a work of art. He got promoted every 18 months. By 35, he was a vice president. He had all the external trappings of success, and he was miserable. He confessed to me one day that he felt like a fraud. He was so busy managing the machine that he hadn't had an original thought in years. He had achieved his ambition, and he found that it was empty. He had won the game, but he had lost himself in the process. His story is a cautionary tale. Be careful which ladder you decide to climb, because you might get to the top and realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. 8.3. The courage to be unimpressive. Embracing this new kind of ambition requires a strange kind of courage, the courage to be unimpressive in the short term. When you first adopt the principles of slow productivity, you will look less productive to the outside world. Your calendar will have empty spaces. You won't respond to emails instantly. You'll be working on 1 or 2 projects while your colleagues are juggling a dozen. In the metrics of the hyperactive hive mind, you will be losing. This can be deeply uncomfortable. Your ego will scream. The part of you that craves approval and validation will panic. You have to be willing to endure this period of being misunderstood. You have to have the quiet confidence to know that you are playing a different game, a longer game. The game of busyness is a sprint for immediate rewards. The game of craftsmanship is a marathon for lasting impact. The existential truth is that your attachment to being seen as productive is an ego trap. It's a need for constant external validation. It's the insecure part of you that needs to be told, "Good job, you're working hard." The shift to slow productivity requires you to wean yourself off this drug. You have to learn to find satisfaction not in the praise of others, but in the quality of the work itself. You have to become your own judge of what constitutes a good day's work. A good day is not a day when you cleared your inbox. A good day is a day when you made meaningful progress on something that matters. This might be invisible to everyone else, but it's all that really counts. Here's how you cultivate this new mindset. 1. Define your long game. What is the body of work you want to create over the next 5 years? What does mastery in your craft look like? Write it down. This is your new definition of ambition. 2. Track progress, not activity. At the end of each day, don't ask, "What did I do today?" Ask, "Did I make progress on my long game project?" Even a tiny step forward is a huge win. This retrains your brain to value deep work over shallow activity. 3. Find a slow role model. Identify someone in your field or another who embodies the craftsman ethos. Study their career. Notice how their major accomplishments were often preceded by long periods of quiet, focused work. Let their example give you the courage to be unimpressive on your way to being exceptional. This is the ultimate choice. You can live in a state of scarcity, frantically trying to prove your worth every day. Or you can live in a state of abundance, confident that by focusing on quality and mastery, you are creating a value that is real, durable, and ultimately far more rewarding. 9.1 Slow Productivity in Practice, the Organizational Challenge. Up to this point, the focus has been largely on what you, as an individual, can do to reclaim your sanity and produce better work. But let's be real. You don't work in a vacuum. You work within an organization with its own culture, its own rules, and its own often dysfunctional definition of productivity. So, how does this philosophy scale? How can entire teams or organizations adopt slow productivity? This is where the book moves from personal salvation to organizational reform. Newport acknowledges that this is the hardest part of the puzzle. It's one thing for a lone wolf to rebel quietly. It's another thing entirely to change the way a whole company works. The inertia of the hyperactive hive mind is immense. The default mode of most organizations is a chaotic mess of ad hoc communication and reactive firefighting. Shifting this requires real leadership and a willingness to fundamentally rethink the how of work. He profiles a few forward-thinking companies that have tried to do just this. One example is a software company that completely banned internal email. Instead, all project-related communication had to happen within a structured project management tool. All conversations were organized by task, not by inbox. The goal was to eliminate the endless, unstructured back and forth of email and make all communication purposeful and transparent. The initial transition was hell. People were used to the instant gratification of firing off an email. They had to learn a new, more deliberate way of communicating. But after a few months, the benefits were undeniable. Meetings were shorter and more focused because much of the status updating was now handled asynchronously in the project tool. People felt less stressed because they weren't constantly tethered to their inboxes, and most importantly, they were shipping better code, faster. 9.2. From push to pull, restructuring workflows. The core principle behind these organizational changes is a shift from a push system to a pull system of work. In a typical push system, work is pushed onto you by others. Your boss pushes a new project onto your plate. A colleague pushes a request into your inbox. The work arrives unpredictably, and you're expected to react to it. This is the root cause of the overload and chaos. You have no control over the flow of work. In a pull system, the workflow is reversed. Work is not pushed onto you. Instead, you pull the next task from an ordered, transparent queue when you have the capacity to work on it. This is the logic of Kanban boards and other agile methodologies. There is a clear, shared understanding of what needs to be done, what the priorities are, and who is working on what. This system has several profound advantages. First, it forces the organization to do fewer things at a systemic level. Because you can't start a new task until an old one is finished, or at least move to the next stage, the system has a built-in work in progress, WIP limit. This prevents the organization from starting 100 projects and finishing none of them. It forces hard choices about what's truly important. Second, it allows individuals and teams to work at a natural pace. When you finish a task, you pull the next one. You are in control of the pace. There is still a sense of urgency to get things done, but it's a focused, sustainable urgency, not the frantic, anxiety-ridden chaos of a push system. Finally, it naturally encourages an obsession with quality. Because the workflow is visible and the steps are defined, it's easier to build in quality checks and feedback loops. The definition of done for a task can include a peer review or a quality assurance step. The system is designed not just for speed, but for correctness and excellence. 9.3. The role of leadership, from fire chief to gardener. For this kind of transformation to happen, leadership needs to change its role dramatically. In the old pseudo-productive model, the manager is often the chief firefighter. Their job is to react to problems, reprioritize on the fly, and keep the machine running, no matter how inefficient it is. They are the biggest pusher in the system, constantly interrupting their teams with urgent new requests. In a slow productivity organization, the leader's role is more like that of a gardener. A gardener doesn't force plants to grow. They create the right conditions for growth. They ensure the soil is good, the plants have enough water and sunlight, and the weeds are kept at bay. Similarly, a slow productivity leader's job is not to manage their team's every move. Their job is to design a system where the team can do their best work. They protect the team from distractions. They clarify priorities. They ensure the workflow is smooth and the resources are available. They clear the path so their team can run. I once had a manager who was a master gardener. Our team used a simple Kanban board to manage all our work. His primary rule was, no one talks to my team about new work except me. He was our shield. All requests had to come through him. He would then vet them, clarify them, and if they were deemed important enough, he would work with us to place them in the backlog. He almost never assigned tasks directly. We, the team, would pull them from the top of the backlog when we were ready. He trusted us to manage our own work. His job was to protect our focus. It was the most productive and least stressful team I have ever been a part of. We did amazing work, not because he was pushing us, but because he had created a system where we were free to pull ourselves toward excellence. The existential challenge for leaders is to let go of control. The pseudo-productive manager feels powerful because they are at the center of the storm, making decisions, giving orders. The slow productive leader has the courage to step back, to trust their team, and to focus on designing the system rather than directing the action. It's a shift from a hero mentality to a humble, service-oriented mentality. Here's the call to action for any aspiring leader or change agent. 1. Map your workflow. Get your team in a room and visually map out how work gets done, from initial request to final delivery. Identify the bottlenecks, the interruptions, and the sources of chaos. Just making the mess visible is a powerful first step. 2. Introduce a pull mechanism. You don't have to boil the ocean. Start with a simple Kanban board for one project. Agree on WIP limits. Forbid work from being assigned outside of the board. Run a 1-month experiment and measure the results. 3. Become the shield. If you're a manager, your new number one job is to protect your team's focus. Intercept as many incoming requests as you can. Defend your team's right to work at a natural, sustainable pace. Your success is no longer measured by how busy your team looks, but by the quality of what they produce. Changing an organization is brutally hard. But the alternative is to condemn your team to a state of perpetual unproductive misery. The choice is between the hard work of systemic change and the soul-destroying hard work of running in place forever. 10.1. The author's main theses. After wading through the diagnosis, the philosophy, and the practical advice, we can distill the book's core argument into a set of powerful, interconnected theses. These are the fundamental claims that form the backbone of slow productivity. They represent a radical departure from the conventional wisdom about work in the 21st century. Thesis 1. Modern productivity is a trap that leads to burnout and mediocrity. Newport's foundational argument is that our current definition of productivity, which he terms pseudo-productivity, is fundamentally broken for knowledge work. This model, which equates productivity with visible activity, emails sent, meetings attended, hours logged, is a misguided application of industrial-era factory logic. It creates a culture of performative busyness that exhausts workers without producing significant value. The relentless pace and cognitive overload inherent in this model don't lead to better results. They lead to burnout, shallow work, and a career of unremarkable output. The hamster wheel of busyness feels like progress, but it's a road to nowhere. Thesis 2. True productivity in knowledge work is about quality, not quantity. The central redefinition offered by the book is to shift the goalpost from volume to value. For a knowledge worker, true productivity is not measured by the number of tasks completed, but by the quality and impact of the work produced. A single, well-crafted, insightful piece of work is infinitely more valuable than 100 mediocre reports. This requires a complete reorientation of our professional values, away from the short-term thrill of clearing a to-do list and toward the long-term satisfaction of creating something excellent. The goal is not to be a high-volume content farm, but a master craftsman. Thesis 3. A sustainable and effective work life is built on 3 pillars: doing fewer things, working at a natural pace, and obsessing over quality. This is the prescriptive core of the book. These 3 principles form a coherent, reinforcing system for escaping the trap of pseudo-productivity. By deliberately limiting work in progress, do fewer things, you create the time and mental space to work without constant rush, work at a natural pace. This sustainable pace, in turn, provides the cognitive resources needed to move beyond good enough and focus on excellence, obsess over quality. The high-quality output that results from this process generates professional capital, which gives you more autonomy to do even fewer things, thus spinning the flywheel faster. Thesis 4. The responsibility for change lies with both the individual and the organization. While Newport provides a wealth of strategies for individual quiet rebellion, he makes it clear that personal change can only go so far. The true enemy is a systemic one, the hyperactive hive mind culture embedded in our organizations and technologies. Therefore, lasting change requires organizational reform. Leaders must transition from being pushers of work and firefighters of chaos to being gardeners who cultivate an environment where focused, high-quality work can flourish. This involves redesigning workflows, e.g. from push to pull systems, setting clear priorities, and, most importantly, protecting the team's time and attention from the relentless onslaught of digital noise. Thesis 5. The slow approach is not about being lazy. It's a more intelligent and ultimately more ambitious way to work. This is perhaps the most crucial mindset shift Newport advocates. Slow productivity is not an excuse to slack off. It is a strategic, deliberate approach to achieving ambitious goals. It redefines ambition away from the frantic climbing of the corporate ladder and toward the deep, patient pursuit of mastery and impact. It takes more discipline, more courage, and more foresight to work slowly and deliberately on something important than it does to reactively churn through a mountain of low-value tasks. It is the ambition of the artisan, not the assembly line worker. And it is the only path to producing a body of work that is both meaningful to the creator and valuable to the world. It's the choice to build a cathedral over a lifetime, rather than a pile of bricks every day. These 5 theses, taken together, form a powerful and cohesive argument. They diagnose the illness of modern work, pseudo-productivity, propose a cure, the 3 principles, identify the obstacles, social pressure, and bad systems, and offer a new, more fulfilling vision of a productive life. It's a call to reject the shallow, exhausting cult of busyness and to embrace a deeper, more humane, and ultimately more effective way of accomplishing things that matter. It's a manifesto for a quieter, more focused, and more meaningful revolution in the way we work. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.